Welcome to Murder Mile. Today, I'm standing beside the Wedlake Street footbridge in Paddington, W9. 3 roads northwest of the home of Gladys Hanrahan. 1 road west of the long rest of Minnie Barry. And 4 roads north of the brutal torture in a Hyde Park flat by a gang of trained dancers. Coming soon to Murder Mile. Stretching over the Grand Union Canal, the Wedlake Street footbridge is a simple steel structure which lets pedestrians cross to the busy Harrow Road. Being part of the city's canal system, some boaters refer to this stretch as bandit country, as it's not uncommon to have your boat broken into, to be roughed up by teenage hoods, chatted up by toothless crack addicts, or to crash your boat into a submerged stolen moped, whilst drunks fling dog shit at your stern, and bored kids shoot at your bow with air rifles. Oh yes, this is a lovely place. But then again, it's not as bad as Slough. Hundreds of boats pass this stretch of the canal every week, chugging through the murky brown churn. With the bend tight and the water shallow, it's a spot notorious for causing your propeller to get fouled by rubbish in the water, whether by old ropes, bin bags, dirty rags, or sometimes a dead body. On Wednesday the 22nd of July 1942, 50 feet west of the Wedlake Street footbridge, the body of a woman was pulled from the water. We know her only as Lena Cunningham. How she got there, why she died, and who she was running from remains a mystery. But her death wasn't the real tragedy. It was her life. My name is Michael. I am your tour guide, and this is Murder Mile. Episode 180. Lena, alone and unloved. These are the opening words of the report into Lena's death. The deceased was a loathsome type who had been sleeping on the canal bank for some time and earned a few shillings by prostitution. In the eyes of an uncaring society, Lena was a nothing, a nobody. Nobody cared for her while she was living, and even less would mourn her when she was dead. Originally built in the 1800s, the Grand Union Canal stretched from Birmingham to London and was once a vital inland transport link for Britain's heavy industry. By the 1940s, with bigger roads and faster rail proving more efficient, the waterways were in the death throes. Being roughly 7 miles from the River Thames, under the Wedlake Street footbridge, an average of 10 steel boats, 6 feet wide by 70 feet long and laden with up to 200 tons of cargo, would pass this stretch of the canal every day. At a sedate 3 miles an hour, they were slow but powerful. Being a forgotten part of a fast-paced city, the water was far from clean. Having filled with 1.5 centuries worth of silt, becoming a dumping ground for builders' rubble, and with a fine slick of oil and sewage on the surface, the boat's propellers were churned through a brown murky stew. That day, being busier than usual, By 11:30 a.m, 6 boats had navigated this section. Burdened by a tight bend, trained boatmen often drop their speed, as although the canal looks deep, even if the boat was dead centre, the bottom of the canal was only 2 to 3 feet down, giving the boat's hull a clearance of just a few inches. It was said that Lena Cunningham was born in Ireland in 1899. And although these details are vague, not all of them might be true. Lena was a woman with no history. According to Edgar Dench, the last man she lived with, she said she came from Ireland, but I could never find out what she had been doing before I met her. She had no family photos, no people she called friends, and no stories of her struggle or tales of her past. It was estimated she was 42, but given the stresses of her life, she may have looked older. Being just 5'1" tall and weighing 8 stone, her body was both scrawny and bloated, having spent her life half-starved, gorging on scraps, and binge-drinking booze to fight off her demons. With her fresh face all weather-beaten, the only colour to her pale skin was the flushing of her cheeks, an unkempt mop of black hair, and encircling the blue innocence of her eternally reddening eyes lay 2 rings of purple bruises, having been beaten by yet another drunk who saw her only as a whole. With a scarred left cheek, an old broken nose, untreated gonorrhea, and a yellow set of dentures held in place by a last black molar. This was a woman who'd had a hard life for a long time. Lena was a mystery. Unmarried, childless, and alone. And yet her name could have been one of 6 aliases she had used for more than 2 decades. What little we know of her life comes from her criminal record. But what it does show is a woman who was always running, always hiding, and trusted no one. Most likely, this was her real name, as the first evidence we have that she even existed was on the 13th of January 1921, when, possibly aged 22, she was bound over at the Marlborough Street Police Court in Soho for theft and 4 other offences including prostitution, under the name of Lena Cunningham. Across her 21 years of known criminal convictions, she deliberately used aliases which were as vague and forgettable as any other, such as Lena King, Lucy King, Maggie King, Mary Smith, and Iris Smith. But what's odd is that at the start of the Second World War, when every British citizen was required to identify themselves under the National Registration Act, Lena Cunningham had used the alias of Alice King. Based on her crimes of more than 80 convictions for prostitution, drunkenness, theft, and living rough, Lena was a woman living day to day who was hiding from her past and unable to face her present. She travelled from city to city, borough to borough, moving on when her face became too well known to the police, and she never stopped in one place for too long. She was a drifter with no roots, whether in West London, Aldershot, Chichester or Liverpool. And yet, never once did she return to Ireland. Like a stuck record, Lena's life was an endless cesspool of misery. On the 22nd of June 1931, in Aldershot, she served 2 months for sleeping in an abandoned shed. Selling her body for just 18 pence per punter. Each night she would need 2 men to violate her to afford her food and lodging. But being a helpless alcoholic who squandered her pittance on Red Lizzie, a fortified wine, most nights she slept wherever she could, like a doorway, a toilet, an alley, or a hedge. As a lost soul with no friends nor enemies, although she was described as a public nuisance, she wasn't violent or rude. As being a wanderer with nowhere to go, she was as memorable as she was forgotten. On the 3rd of July 1936, at Brentford, Lena was sentenced to 7 days for being drunk and incapable. With significant injuries to her face and body, a broken nose, a fractured eye socket, several cracked ribs and bruises to her throat. For neither the first time nor the last, Lena was attacked by a customer. It was a little over 11:30 a.m. on Wednesday the 22nd of July 1942, when Harry Stevens, a labourer working at Globe Vernick, spotted something odd in the water. "I was coming down the iron rung ladder at the back of the works when I saw something floating. The sky was clear and the canal was muddy brown. And although it was not uncommon to see black bits of crap bobbing below the oily surface, this was white. Having telephoned Harrow Road Police Station, within minutes, PC's Hithersay and Glen had arrived. 10 yards west of the bridge, seeing the unmistakable form of a woman floating face down. With the aid of 2 grappling irons, they brought her to the bank and laid her cold, lifeless body on the towpath. Police surgeon Dr. Tweddle attended the scene and declared her life as extinct. With her flesh slightly bloated, making her eyes thin like mere slits, it was clear that she'd been in the water for at least a week. For the police, her identity would be a mystery, as she had no handbag, no purse, no papers, no ticket stubs, no tattoos, no photos, and no birthmarks. How she had ended up there was impossible for the detectives to tell, as with multiple injuries, each one could have occurred moments before or after she had entered the water, or either side of her death. As for her clothing, at some point before her life was taken, she'd been fully dressed. On her feet, all that remained was one black shoe. On both legs was a pair of black stockings held up with lace garters. Every inch of her skin from her knees to her chest was naked, except for a single ripped sleeve of a brown coat on her right arm, the torn fabric of a blue floral dress, which was rolled up and wrapped tightly around her neck like a brightly coloured noose. And yet, oddly, she was wearing no knickers and no bra. briefly examined on the bank. She had several unexplained injuries, which needed a pathologist's eye. Along her legs, her back, her buttocks and her breasts were a series of thick, deep bruises. And with several ribs broken and her left forearm fractured, it looked as if she'd been crushed under a heavy object. With no canal water in her lungs, it was clear that she hadn't drowned. But she had died of asphyxiation and shock. And although a strange series of identical semicircular lacerations had sliced up her body from her buttocks to her scalp, initially the police couldn't determine what weapon could have done this damage. But what was most baffling were the items which were missing. She had no purse, no handbag, no house keys and no jewellery. She didn't have a savings book and she had no banknotes. And yet, hidden in her left garter was a single shilling. And in the ankle of her right stocking, 1 shilling and 6pence. Patrolling the towpath from Paddington Basin to Wormwood Scrubs, the police found several ripped fragments of the victim's dress in the water, and among a tall patch of grass by the Scrubs Lane Bridge, a brown felt hat which matched her coat, and 2 pieces of yellow soap wrapped in brown paper. Who she was, where she'd come from, and how she'd ended up here was all a mystery. But what concerned them most was this. Having been dead for a week, why had no one reported her missing? In July 1936, following the assault in Brentford, which left her broken and bedridden, unable to earn a shilling for a night's sleep, Lena was kicked out of her lodging house at 13 Duncan Terrace in Islington. Hobbling and swollen, Lena drifted to a new part of the city where she was known by no one. The East London town of Wanstead. Being rough, gloomy, and smog-thick with industry, it was the perfect place where a nobody could stay unknown. And yet it was here that she would find someone. Almost 3 decades her senior, Edgar Dench was a 69-year-old scrap metal dealer. With varicose veins and festering ulcers on his legs, owing to a lifetime of hard toil, he struggled to walk unaided. But with no savings to allow him to retire, just like Lena, he lived every day with each penny as precious as the last. Living alone in a small wooden hut in the bowels of the scrapyard, Edgar was a lonely man with no one to love, whose only pleasure in his shitty little life was a pint in the Green Man pub in Leytonstone. Seeing a woman who was bedraggled, having slept in a hedge at Epping Forest, Edgar got chatting to Lena. He bought her a drink of Red Lizzie, and hearing her plight, they came to a mutual agreement. In return for cooking, cleaning, and sorting the rags, for a modest wage of £1 a week, she would get food, warmth, friendship, and a bed in his little wooden hut at 72 Eastern Avenue. As an unassuming little man, Edgar provided a hint of stability in her life, and there she stayed for 6 years. Lena had stopped running and hiding. but her demons were never far behind. By the 1940s, Edgar was the closest thing that Lena had as a friend or a family. And yet he only knew her as Alice King. When he asked about her upbringing, the tears would flow, so his questions stopped. Edgar was a good man who treated her well, and he genuinely loved her. Later saying, "Had it not been for her drinking, I would have married her." From the darkness, he had given her life a hint of hope and happiness. But after so long living in the wilderness, something in her past would make her run. At first, Edgar feared for her safety. But after a few days, and sometimes a few weeks, she would always stumble back. Her clothes ragged, her face bruised, and having been arrested for drunkenness, he would pay off her fines. With her bed and belongings in the scrapyard, keen to give her a home, but also her own space, he never reported her missing, as he always knew that she would return. Until one day, she didn't. With 3 fines over 2 weeks, and a brief stint at Holloway Prison for drunkenness, on Friday the 12th of June 1942 at 4 p.m, she was arrested on Cambridge Park Road for being intoxicated and incapable. Fed up with Lena, as he had done many times before, Edgar asked her to leave. She packed a small leather case with a few essentials, like 2 pieces of hard yellow soap wrapped in brown paper. From a rag pile, she selected an old but presentable outfit: a blue floral dress, a brown overcoat, and a matching felt hat. And in her black leather handbag, she placed her unemployment papers, her national registration card, and to pay the fines that she owed, 30 shillings, which Edgar had given her. On the morning of Saturday the 13th of June 1942, she left the scrapyard, having been summoned to attend Stratford Petty Sessions. Only she didn't arrive at court. She never paid the fines. She squandered the 30 shillings on Red Lizzie. And in a different part of town, Lena went back to selling her body for sex. An autopsy was conducted by Sir Bernard Spilsbury. With a series of 5-inch wounds from her legs to her head, as well as breaks, fractures, and crush injuries, he concluded it was possible she had been knocked down by a car and killed, and that her body had been thrown into the canal, possibly from a bridge. Police scoured every garage and spoke to each mechanic seeking a damaged car, but they found none. They interviewed the landlords of every local lodging house, but no one knew of her. And as a woman who wanted to remain anonymous, she would be as memorable as she was forgotten. By chance, at the Scrubs Lane Bridge, just over 1 mile west of where her body was found, officers identified a deep impression in the tall grass where someone had slept. hidden by a brick wall. They spotted Lena's brown felt hat and brown overcoat, as later identified by Edgar, and 2 pieces of hard yellow soap wrapped in brown paper. With her identification and bags missing, either she'd been mugged, she had lost them, or someone had stolen them in the week between her death and her discovery. Knowing that this was where she had spent her final night alive, the police would piece together the last known movements of Lena Cunningham. First seen 1 week before her death, Frederick Edmonds, a park keeper at Wormwood Scrubs, who knew the prostitutes who plied their trade in the area, noticed a newcomer with dark hair, blue eyes, and a brown outfit, who went by the name of Alice King and hung out at the Pavilion pub on Wood Lane. On Wednesday the 15th of July 1942, a month after she'd left Edgar, she was seen 3 times in the pub. First at 5 p.m. when it opened for evening orders, and at 10:30 p.m. after last orders had been called. Sporting 2 black eyes, Lena, along with many local prostitutes, picked up men on Wormwood Scrubs Common. As being wartime, the 172nd AAZ Battery of the Royal Artillery was stationed there. Just shy of 9 p.m, at the back of the prison, Lena was seen talking to 2 soldiers through the barbed wire fence. Identified as Gunners Paget and Coulson, they would later state she said she hadn't had a break all day. As the passing trade was sparse and needing a shilling for a night's lodging, she asked if we'd like to come with her for 18 pence. Only they said they didn't take her up on her offer for sex. Having seen her for the last month, as always, she was drunk, her clothes were dirty, her bruises were fresh, and with her shoes described as shoddy, she walked awkwardly as one shoe had a bad heel. During the night, she was seen with a grey-haired man at the rear of the prison, which may explain why she had coins in her stockings. As the police in Wanstead said, that was where she hid her earnings. A few minutes past 10:30 p.m, Lena was seen by Frederick Edmonds, talking to a man as she hobbled on a broken shoe, up Wood Lane and towards the canal. It was dark, so he was unable to describe him. At some point during that night, Lena Cunningham would die. And although Dr. Spilsbury had stated his theory that she had been hit by a car and dumped in the canal, based on the police's following investigation, a second autopsy would cause him to revise his conclusion. The deep impression in the grass by Scrubs Lane Bridge suggested a theory. Having taken a man, or several, back to the canal for sex, she'd been paid and had stashed her coins in her stockings. But being too late and too drunk to seek out a night's lodging, she had bedded herself down in the tall grass. often drinking till she passed out. The autopsy would confirm that seconds before she had died, she had vomited. Staggering to the canal and choking as her last undigested meal had blocked her airways. Stumbling on a broken heel, she had slipped, fell, and hit her forehead on the canal stone edge. Immersed in water, unconscious, and unable to breathe. It was the shock and lack of air that had killed her. Speaking to the chief patrol officer of the Grand Union Canal, who had recovered hundreds of bodies in his 24-year career, he would state, "She would have sunk and rolled into the centre of the canal, which on some stretches is heavily silted, murky brown, strewn with rubbish, and just a few feet deep." Being submerged for several days, the water would have carried her east towards Paddington. With her injuries consistent, the police identified all of the boats which had traversed this stretch from the 15th to the 22nd of July. Job Neal, captain of a working boat called the Tyburn, would recall his propeller being fouled half a mile west of the Ladbroke Grove Bridge, and just a few days before a body was found. Examining his hull, as he always did when his engine stalled, around his propeller he had to cut away several thick rolled shreds of a blue floral fabric, having been ripped from Lena's dress. With his boat sitting 2.5 feet below the waterline, it's likely, with only a few inches of clearance, that Lena was hit and rolled underneath his, and certainly several other boats, as the 20 to 200 ton bulk rolled over, and their 3-foot wide propeller blades cut thick slices up the length of her body. Lena's details were posted in the newspaper. Coming forward, Edgar would identify her body, and she was later formally identified as Lena Cunningham, owing to the fingerprints in her criminal record. On the 8th of August 1942, at Hammersmith Coroner's Court, the inquest into Lena's death concluded. The coroner would state, "There is no evidence that the deceased met her death as a result of foul play. And as there was insufficient fact to suggest a suicide or an accident, he recorded an open verdict." With it mentioned in the press that she had money on her person and no known next of kin, several men claimed to be her husband and the rightful heir to her money, but found to be liars. The 2 shillings and 6pence found in her stockings went to pay for her burial in an unmarked communal grave in Paddington. In life, she was invisible, and in death, she wasn't even seen as human. In the police report, which described her as a loathsome type, it would state, "The idea that such a wretched creature was raped is out of the question, owing to her known moral character and the fact that all she would charge was 8p, with many of her clients not much of a better class than herself." Lena may not have had much, but she was worth more. As a woman fleeing the horrors of her past, she deserved a better life and at least a hint of happiness. But unable to trust others, even those who gave her a home. Lena would die as she lived, alone and unloved. Frickin' Nora, man. What's going on with this bloody heat? Oh, we're not even in a heat wave. Not even in the heat wave anymore. And it is today. It's horrible. I think it's only like 23 degrees. It's meant to be all right and it's cloudy, but it's muggy as shit. Oh, this mugginess can FRO. I'm gonna take your little hat off. Here we go. Taking your hat off. There you go. Whoa, I'm just going to open the window a bit. Oh, lordy. Oh, it's just it's muggy, effing muggy, Robert Muggy. Oh man, now I've got flies buzzing around. I had to have the windows shut while we were doing this. It's just too hot. I pulled out a tissue partway through, and I had to keep mopping my brow because I was just sweating all the way through that. Oh, time for a nice Diet Coke. Oh, not going to make a cup of tea. Too hot for a bloody cup of tea. Oh, that was bakey hot. I sweated all the way through my pyjamas. Yes, it's almost 4 in the afternoon. I'm still in pyjamas. Why? Because it's what I do. It's my thing. Yeah. So, hey everyone. Welcome to Extra Mile. Here we are. We're here, we're back. Episode 180. 180! God, dear, who'd have thought we got that far? 180, I think there's 180 official episodes. I think it's like 260 online. If you go on to Patreon, I think there's another 80 episodes of Walk With Me on there. Cool. If you wanted to, there's... What would that be? That would be like 400 hours of entertainment. God, dear, who would want that? Jeez, what a nightmare. 400 hours of me, what a nightmare. Horrible. Anyway, as mentioned, this is Extra Mile. Unscripted, unedited, blah, 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 blah. If you're new to this is... Ooh, burpee. This is what it is. Me burping, me doing a quiz question, me giving you some details about the case. We probably didn't make it into the episode. We do quiz questions. I can't remember if I said that. We do thank yous to Patreon supporters. Thank you this week, Laura Bell. Thank you so much. Patron supporter of the week. My favourite patron supporter of the week. There we go. Well, we'll make a new thing this week. Favourite patron supporter of the week. Of course, if there's 3, there'll be 3 patron supporters of the week. There we go. Oh, still hot. I need to open up some more doors. What's going on in the world? Don't know. Oh, when this goes out, the London show will have happened. The How to Plan the Perfect Murder, and then totally balls it up. So this goes out Thursday the 11th of August, this episode, if you're listening to it when it goes out. If not, you'll get it when you listen to it. So yeah, we would have done the show by then. So if you listen to that now and you're like, oh, I'm in London that day and I could do with watching the show, there might be some tickets available. You don't know. Limited tickets. It's only like 100-seater, so yeah, and most have already gone, but you never know. We've also got a date from Manchester. We're going to be doing that in October, so I will announce soon our Manchester date and venue. All very exciting. What else is going on in the world? I decided to try this week because I'm still trying to work out TikTok. I don't understand TikTok. It's really, I'm finding it really baffling. So what I did was I thought, right, I'm going to take some really new, interesting stories that I've never told, some little ones, and I'm going to really nicely edit them and shoot them and make them look really good and very polished and, very nice. I'm going to put those out. And at the same time, I was walking down the street and I saw something and I thought, oh, I should really do that. So I recorded something. It was just done on my phone. It wasn't particularly well done. Didn't think it was particularly good. The 2 things that I laboured over and put out and I thought were really nice and funny and a nice balance to them and good, really nicely done. People barely acknowledged. The crappy bit that I was just kind of like, nah, this will do, I'll put this out. did about 5 to 10 times better than them. You just, I don't get it. Why do people like quality? Why do they like shit? Just, I don't get it. I don't get it. It's weird because it makes you not want to put in any effort when you see someone posting something that's just utter crap. Or like, as I noticed something the other day. Someone had got really high figures on it, and a train's coming into a station, and someone went, "Oh my god, I just caught that! Oh my god, I just caught that on my phone in it! You don't get me? I just got it on my phone in it! Did you see that?" Nothing happened. It's like, and so many people were watching it and going, "What's happening?" And everyone's just going, "Nothing's happening. It's just some prick trying to get attention who's literally filming a train going in, going, 'Oh my god, you see that? You see that? I got it on my phone. Mia's gonna put it on TikTok, innit?'" Oh, and you just think, why are people looking at that? And yet, quality stuff, they won't. Oh, just baffling. Anyway, I'm still trying to work out TikTok. Getting there slowly. I think I'm just going to keep putting out better quality stuff. If people want to look at shit, they can, but the people who like quality, they will hunt it out. What else is going on? I think that's it. I think that's all I need to say about shite that's going on in the world. I'm going to head into my favourite little coffee shop in the morning and start editing this. I've got into a nice habit now of editing in coffee shops, because the rough edit at the start, when I'm just... Because obviously, when you hear the narration at the start, you may think, oh, he does that in one take. It's not in one take. It takes bloody ages. And I cock it up. And especially in the heat, sweat's pouring down, and I'm tripping over words. And I'm making mistakes. And sometimes when I'm doing the narration, I realise that it reads well in your head, but it doesn't read well when you try to pronounce it. So then I have to rewrite it. So it can take a couple of hours. So half an hour can take a long time to kind of get the narration out, and then I have to go into a coffee shop in the morning and then edit it so it sounds like it flows naturally, but it really doesn't. But I make it sound natural, so that's what I do in the morning. Because I'll do the rough edit on the narration, which takes about a day to get out just right. That's more than most people spend on their whole episode. In fact, some people don't even spend an hour on their episode. Me, I spend a whole day just trying to get the narration to flow nicely, and then when I do the clean edit, so that's getting all the sounds and the noises in there, I need a really quiet place. Except it's noisy here. Listen to that. That's a weir behind me. That's a weir I'm right next to. So yeah. Anyway, let's do some quiz questions. Don't forget, as always, I'll probably ball some of these up. Am I still recording? I am still recording. So 10 questions. I might ball them up. We'll do the answers at the end. Right, let's dive in. Quick swig of chemicals. Oh, yummy. And now it's really warm now. I only had bought that like a little while ago. Right, questions. Question number 1. What was the brand of wine which Lena drank? Question number 2. For boaters, what part of the canal is not as bad as which other place? So I mentioned this at the start. For boaters, what part of the canal is not as bad as which other place? I just realised sorry, that question doesn't even make sense. For boaters, the part of the canal that we were on, so that bit, yeah, see, I could do with editing that bit, but I'm not going to edit that bit. For the boaters, the part of the canal that we were focused on in that episode, I said it's not as bad as which other place. What is the other place I'm making reference to? There we go, that's the sort of the question. Question number 3. How much did Lena sell sex for? So that's a simple question. Question 4. Except for London, which one of the other cities or towns do we know that she lived in? So it's 3 other places. Which, except London, which of the other cities or towns do we know that she lived in? Question number 5. Which prison do we know that she served in? Question number 6. Which police station did the officers who pulled her body out of the water come from? Question number 7. What tools did the officers use to fish her out of the water? This number 8 is a difficult one. What was the name of the officers who pulled her out of the water? Question 9. What is the name of the pub where Lena met Edgar? So what is the name of the pub where Lena met Edgar? Another burp there. Question number 10. Another hard one. What is the address of the scrapyard in Wanstead? Again, as mentioned, some of these I might accidentally delete. Well, not accidentally delete. Sometimes I delete stuff out because it's just, it slows the episode down, or it doesn't flow right, or there's various reasons why I might, or it could be repetition. So sometimes I'll delete them, but I haven't edited this yet, obviously. So let's dive into Lena's criminal convictions. It was about 5 pages long, but 1 page was missing, and that seemed to be the pages in and around the time when she was with Edgar. We don't know why it was missing, but it was definitely missing. A page was definitely gone. So we know that she was called Lena Cunningham. We think it's odd that she registered under the National Registration Act under the name of Alice King, which was not her name. But she did go under Lena King, Lucy King, Maggie King, Mary Smith, Iris Smith. I had difficulty saying that during the episode. We only think her name is Lena Cunningham because that was her first offence, and that quite often that's the name you use when you're arrested for your first offence. Quite often people will use their real name, and then they'll start using aliases. So 13th of January 1921, she was bound over for 3 years at Marlborough Street Police Court. So she was in Soho at that point. For larceny, which is theft, plus 4 convictions for minor offences, including prostitution. And given the fact that Soho is a place known for prostitution, it makes sense. 4th of March 1926, same place, charged with soliciting under the name of Alice King. 3rd of May 1926, just a bit later, 1 month hard labour, West London Police Court for being a riotous and indecent prostitute, under the name of Lucy King. 13th of July 1926, she served 2 times 1 month consecutively at West London Police Court, again for being drunk and riotous and malicious damage. The problem with a lot of these cases is, say, a riotous and indecent prostitute, it doesn't give you any details, and obviously this is down to the officer in question to put down what they say it is, but it can be quite flexible, as we've seen before, especially with the term of prostitute. If a policeman saw you as a lone woman in this era, in the same place 3 times, he could accuse you of being a prostitute, and you can't recourse from that. You can't say, I'm not a prostitute. So it kind of makes it really difficult. Malicious damage as well. What is malicious damage? We don't have any details about that. She could have been drunk, she could have fallen, she could have broken something. So, but they could say malicious damage, so it's really hard to nail this down. But everyone who seemed to know her said she wasn't violent, she wasn't nasty, she was a drunk, she was a little bit fun, but you know what, she could be a little bit funny sometimes. 23rd of August 1926, she served 7 months in prison for being, again, a riotous prostitute and an assault on a policeman. Again, we don't know what the assault is. When you look at it on paper, it looks like she probably had a fisty fight with a policeman, but she could have pushed him, she could have shoved him, she could have spat at him, she could have fallen into him. It's such a vague term. Again, under the title of Alice King. 29th of January 1927, she a £1 fine and 11 days in prison for being, again, a riotous prostitute. After that, another one for prostitution. Again, another one, drunken, riotous and malicious damage, this time under Lena Cunningham. She's moving around a lot at this point. 24th of October 1927, 26 days in prison for soliciting. 29th of October 1928, Westminster for drunk and disorderly, again, and an assault, under the name of Alice Smith. See, a different name there. 18th of February 1930, 21 days in prison for indecency. We don't know what indecency means. It could be that she was a prostitute, or she could have been having sex with someone in public, so that could be indecency, under Maggie King. 4th of March 1931, bound over for 12 months and a £2 fine at Bow Street, drunk and disorderly, under Maggie King. At this point, 1931, she moves to Liverpool. We don't know why. Maybe given the fact that she's Irish and there's a big Irish community there, maybe she had family there, but we don't know. She was bound over for 12 months with a £5 fine for being drunk and disorderly, again under Alice Smith. 4th of April 1931, still in Liverpool. She failed to turn up at the court. She was kind of bound over and then she went against that. She was drunk. That was under Mary Smith. 13th of April 1931, still in Liverpool. £2 fine, one month offence for offensive behaviour, this time under Mary Smith. Same year, middle of June, she moves to Aldershot, where she serves 2 months hard labour for wandering abroad, i.e. being homeless, and lodging in a shed. This time under Mary Smith. So all of hers are prostitution, drunkenness, homelessness. Very little kind of theft in order to fund what she's doing. 8th of March 1933, back at Bow Street. 1 month in prison plus 62 convictions for drunkenness, indecency and prostitution under the name of Iris Smith. 24th of May 1932, 5 shilling fine and 5 days in prison at West London for being drunk and skipping bail under Alice King. It's amazing because these are all on the same sheet. So every time she gives an alias, obviously they know who she is because they get her fingerprints. They double check them. Most of the time they know who she is anyway. They've got a photograph and they go, actually you're Lena, and they put it down as Alice King or whatever alias she's doing. 29th of I realised I gave away one of the answers then. There we go. That's fine, fuck it. Yeah, I've given away one answer, you can have that one. I'll give away another one here. Actually, I missed out 3, so that's irrelevant anyway. 29th of July 1933 at Chichester. There you go, that was one of them. 21 days hard labour for stealing collection boxes and its contents. 8th of June 1935 at Epsom. See, I missed that one. 1 month in prison for being drunk and disorderly. 3rd of July 1936. I missed this one as well. Brentford, but mentioned in the episode. She was fined 5 shillings plus 15 shillings and sixpence and 7 days in prison for being drunk and incapable. And this is the one where they say she suffered significant injuries to her face and body resulting from an assault on Hounslow Heath while soliciting for prostitution. She'd been the victim of assault by various clients on many occasions, and this is where there's a gap in a police record. It might not be in the police record, it was just in the file that I had, and there's no other way to check it. So that was 1936. We don't hear anything from her again until 1941. That's where the next page comes from. So we're missing about five years. She doesn't appear to have done much in terms of crime during that period, but she's with Edgar at that moment. So it's as you can see in the episode, it's on and off. She stays with him. She does well. She earns a bit of money. She has a good life, and then she gets flighty again. She gets drunk. She disappears, or he kind of boots her out, but hoping that she'll sort herself out, but she never does, and then she comes back. 29th of August 1941, she was sentenced to 4 days hard labour at East Ham Police Court for being drunk and disorderly. 23rd of April 1942 at Leytonstone for being drunk and incapable. She was found in Bush Road in Leytonstone. She was drunk, incapable and complaining of having missed her handbag. Now this was the handbag that would ultimately be stolen. She did find it before she left to go to Wormwood Scrubs, because Edgar remembers seeing her with a bag, which is why we know those details. 4th of May 1942 at Albany Police Station, that's north of Regent's Park. She was drunk and incapable. 9th of May 1942 at Marlborough Street Police Court, again drunk and incapable. So it seems to be a kind of a tragedy that everything is kind of a constant spiral with her. Nothing ever changes. It just goes back and back. Oh, what have we got? Let's have a look at some of the witnesses. So obviously Edgar Dench, they've got him down as a marine store dealer, but he was actually a scrap dealer. What else can we say? He only knew her as Alice King. The only reason we know about her age, which was estimated, is that's what he said he thought her age was, but we can't verify that. He identified her at Paddington Mortuary on the 24th of July, which was 2 days later. He recognised her by her face, her sharp nose, and the clothes that she was wearing when she was living with him just 7 days before she was found. So she was still wearing the clothes she was found in were the clothes that she left in, so she hadn't got a spare change of clothes. We've already heard about Harry Stevens, who worked at Globe Vernick. The building is still there, that Globe Vernick. They were a furniture manufacturers who kind of made bookcases and things like that. And apparently it's a bit of arts and crafts that's very fashionable today, and the building is still there today. I think it's called Canalot Studios now. It's a very arty place. What else we got? Originally the divisional surgeon, Dr. Tweddle, good name, he arrived on the scene, certified life as extinct. He said that initially that he thought that, when you look at his details, he says initially that she'd been in the water for 2 days, then he says 3 or 4 days, and then he says roughly around a week. It turned out it was a week, but it's kind of hard to pin it down right at the start. Frederick Edmonds, the park keeper, had worked at Wormwood Scrubs Common for about 15 years. He would say, during my service I have often seen women who service men in Wormwood Scrubs. I last saw this woman on the 15th of July 1942 as he was on leave on the 16th to the 23rd. She was talking to men, soldiers and civilians, and taking them back to Scrubs Bridge, which was where the grass where she was sleeping was. I last saw her about 10:20 p.m. She seemed sober. They said that it would only take about 3 glasses of wine for her to be a bit shit-faced. And he noticed that he'd seen her a couple of days before. Barmaid Mona Orstwick of the Pavilion Pub, which is still there today, she saw her on the 15th and said, I remember she had 2 thick black eyes. She was never sober, but she was never quarrelsome. Lena was mostly seen in the public bar from 5 p.m. when it opened until 10:30 p.m. when it closed, and she'd been there since the middle of June. What else? We got the PCs when they turned up, whose names I won't mention, because there we go, that's one of the quiz questions, Melda and Michael. They brought the body to the bank, and immediately they knew that there was no reason to do artificial respiration because she was clearly dead. Detective Inspector Stinton of X Division, which is Paddington, he said the body had the appearance of being naked, except that on the right arm was a portion of a lady's brown overcoat, a heavy crepe dress with the sleeves missing, a portion of green floral dress, she seemed to be wearing multiple dresses, torn, and the pale green dress had brown spots on it. Later when they looked at the browns, I didn't put this in the episode, the brown spots was oil from the engine. Or the propeller. The clothing was rolled up around her neck. Also, she was wearing silk stockings, 2 black garters, and one right black shoe. Her clothes were extensively torn, consistent with being torn by the propeller of barges. What else we got? At the autopsy, 2 fingernails were removed, and underneath they saw brown stainage, which initially they thought was some kind of industrial dye, but they took it to Hendon Laboratory and it was certified that it was more kind of like oil, again from the barges. So even though when you look at I think it just seems to be one officer who's right in this, and he seems to be the one who doesn't seem to have a kind of a caring bone in his body. He's the one who makes reference to her being worthless and a wretched creature and things like that, which is entirely disrespectful. But when you look at the hard work they put into it, like body found in the water, and they covered 3 to 4 miles of the bank scouring it for any details, and that's where they found like a hat and things like that, and they were able to piece it together. And as seen here, they're finding stuff under her fingernails and trying to get it analysed so they can work out what it is, so where she might have come from. So they put in a lot of effort to find out exactly who she is and what she was about. Job Neal, who was the tugboat captain of the boat, which one of the boats they knew had run her over, he lived nearby at Bronsbury Villas. He'd been on the canal since he was 14. For the last 3 years, he'd been working on a tugboat called Tyburn, travelling the Grand Union Canal. He makes 6 journeys a day. He said that when he was passing the Kensal Green section, the canal varies at points. Sometimes it can be 4 or 5 feet deep, but quite often it can be as little as 2 feet, and the difference between the water line and the bottom of his boat is about 2.5 feet. So quite often, I've had it myself. Sometimes you'll be driving along and you can hear that you'll be in the middle of the canal. You can hear the bottom scraping against it, or if some prick has thrown a trolley in the middle of the water, then you can get stuck on that, which can be a real pain in the ass. But of course, it's funny when people throw shite in the canal. He said any obstructions my boat would normally run over and would probably be caught up in the propeller. We get obstructions every day. On Tuesday the 21st of July, or a day after, I had an obstruction which reduced the speed of the engine. I cleared it and found a piece of dark blue rag. This was part of the blue crepe dress that the police found. I put it on the side of the canal. It would likely be that clothing of the body would have got caught up in the propeller. And when they looked at kind of the injuries that occurred to her body, it was consistent with the propeller kind of spinning round and then cutting up her body as she rolled underneath the boat itself. He said that when he got out, at that point he didn't see a body in the water. Obviously, being a boater, he's got a job to do. He's on his way into Paddington. He's at that point looking to continue his journey. You're not looking around for bodies in the water. Why would you? What else? His boat was loaded with 70 tons of coal at that point. He used a steel hook to remove it, which means he wasn't under the water. He was using kind of barge hook to get it out. What you do is you kind of wrap it around the thing and then you turn it like you would with spaghetti, and that kind of unspools it. He said this is a very common thing, and obviously propellers get fouled up with discarded rubbish all the time. I concur, it certainly does. Initially, he did see the body. So before, I didn't put this in the episode because it throws everything off, but before the body was initially found by Harry Stevens, he said Wednesday the 22nd of July, so the same day, 8:15 a.m. He was going past the gasworks, which is just a little bit more west. I saw the body of a woman in the water. The tug passed it, but I did not touch it. When I got to Paddington, I saw the police patrol boat leaving Paddington and heading for Kensal Green. He said it's entirely possible that the Tyburn, his boat, may have struck the woman on one of the journeys. He didn't report it to the police as seeing them depart. He thought that's where they were going, but they weren't, and they didn't see it either. There is a kind of a police patrol boat that goes up and down the canal quite often. He said his propeller was 3 feet wide by 6 inches in diameter. His boat sits 2.5 feet to 3 feet below the waterline, depending on how much coal he's got on board. And the propeller revolves at an average of 410 revs per minute. Also on the water that day was the fireboat, but that didn't see the body either. Obviously, the one thing that I think is really interesting in this case is the autopsies of Sir Bernard Spilsbury. So the first one we have is him saying, I think she might have been hit by a car and her body dumped in the canal, which is very exciting. But afterwards, after the police have done an investigation, they found out where she was staying and what she did that night and what was going on. And because they couldn't find any cars that had kind of bloodstains or consistent damage, and they hadn't found anyone who'd taken a car into a garage to get it fixed, they did a thorough search and they checked all the lodging houses and things like that. Because they hadn't found anything to do with that, he did a second autopsy, and then all of a sudden he goes, oh no, I found vomit in her throat, and therefore she must have keeled over and drowned in the... Well, not drowned, because she'd got vomit in her throat, so she couldn't breathe. She collapsed, she hit her head, and then she died of asphyxiation and shock. So it's amazing how quickly he changed his theory. He's quite an arrogant man, and you can kind of see many times that he kind of goes, I believe this, I'm going to go with this, that person's guilty, there we go. But at this point, and this is 4 months after the Blackout Ripper murders, the 4 that we know about, not the earlier ones, he's not too far away from his retirement. This is not... I think this might be after the point that his son died. He's starting to lose his marbles by this point. He's going a little bit off the radar. this is kind of weird, isn't it? How can you go from saying, I think all of her injuries happened before she died and before she entered the water, and then with the second autopsy he's saying no, she didn't drown, she fell in the water, she died of shock, and then all of the injuries happened post-mortem. As a pathologist, you would be able to know the difference between whether injuries are ante-mortem or post-mortem, and he seems to be wavering on this one. He seems to be all over the shop, which doesn't help the investigation, which is why it's still an open verdict. There's nothing in there at all. He said, this is the second autopsy, I agree with that some of the injuries could have been caused that way. The injuries to the arms might have been caused by crushing between the boat passing over her and the bed of the canal. I think all of the worst injuries could have been caused in two ways. In the injuries must have happened as she entered the water and before she drowned. See, again, he's wavering again. It could have happened that she fell in the water. It can be said that death occurred between the 15th and the 20th of July. I mean, that's really vague by that point. So time of death is either 3 days or a week. It would be consistent to say that she lost her balance, fell in the water, and was struck by passing tugboats. In my opinion, none of these injuries were homicidal in any ordinary sense. Again, keeping it vague. Coroner said, I shall simply record the fact and leave the verdict open. Alice King came to her death between the 15th and 20th of July on the Grand Union Canal. Death was due to shock from multiple injuries, the cause of which has not been fully disclosed by the evidence, which means an open verdict. So there you go. To answer the question, you're probably thinking why. Oh, hang on. If she wasn't attacked, why was she not wearing knickers and a bra? Well, think about it. She's a sex worker. Why would you wear knickers and a bra, given the fact that you'd probably be taking them off 10 times a day? You just wouldn't bother. You don't wear knickers, you don't wear a bra. It makes life easier. So that's probably why. Being poor, she probably didn't have any. Because, expensive things to buy. Bras, expensive things to buy, apparently. I don't know about that. But, it's likely that maybe she didn't own any. Or maybe because of her job, she didn't need to. But yeah, no, they did not a bad job. I've got a list of all the boats. They literally, because boats have to go through all the locks, and all the lock keepers kept lists of all the boats. So they basically visited all the lock keepers and double checked all of the boats that went through, and spoke to all the captains and double checked everything. So given the fact that this is just a body in the water, kind of not a deliberate, not something that on the outside looks definitely like a murder, they really did a thorough job, especially given the fact that this is right in the height of World War II, lots of deaths going on, and interesting. Anyway, so we shall never know what really happened to Lena, but I think it's likely that what happened is what happened. I know it's sensational to say, I think she was murdered, but why? Why is no evidence for that? So let's do some the answers to the questions. Question number 1. What was the brand... burpees. What was the brand of wine which Lena drank? It was called Red Lizzie. It was a tawny wine, which is kind of like a fortified wine, like a sherry. Question number 2. Here we go, there's that question again. For boaters, the part of the canal we were on I described as not as bad as which other place? I referred to it as bandit country, and I said, although it's not as bad as Slough. Now, I know some people go, I live in Slough. Why did he say Slough is a horrible place? Slough's not a horrible place. I'm going to give him 1 star. I would give him 0 stars, only iTunes doesn't let me. The reason why I say that is because when you're going down, like from Uxbridge, and you go down the Grand Union, and you can turn up the canal and go into Slough, everyone calls it bandit country, because all the little shitbags come out and they hurl like rocks at your boat and bricks, and they jump on your boat and they smash your windows, and it's just horrible. There's no reason to go there, so no one goes there. It's literally, everyone goes, don't go to Slough. A, it's a dead end. B, it's bandit country. So I'm not going to go at Slough. I'm going to go at the little shitbags who come out and vandalise boats on the canal. Little bastards that they are. And you can't go to sleep because the little shitbags come out on their motorbikes and they're like, and you're just like, fuck off, and then they vandalise your boat or they torch it. Every time someone's boat gets vandalised, we always go, where are you? They're either in Victoria Park or in Slough, and we always go, well, there you go. Question number 3. How much did Lena sell sex for? It was 18 pence per person. Not much money at all. So that was, although when you think about it, she was earning £1 a week at the scrapyard. So yeah, she could probably earn about £1 a night selling sex if she sold. She had sex with 6 men, but she spent most of her money on Red Lizzie, which was the problem, which is why she rarely was able to get into a lodging. Question number 4, except for London, this is that bullshit question, except for London, which one of the other cities or towns do we know that she lived in? Answers to the question were either Aldershot, Chichester or Liverpool. I fucked up all of those questions. So you can have that as a freebie. Question 5, which prison do we know that she served in? I didn't balls up this one. It was Holloway Prison. Question 6, which police station did the officers who pulled her body out of the water come from? It was Harrow Road Police Station. And if you like a little bit of trivia, there was a officer working out of Harrow Road Police Station in 1942 who lived a couple of streets away, and his name was Reg Christie. There you go. Oh, people are getting excited. They're going, oh, I wonder if Reg Christie killed her. No, he didn't. I mean, I can't definitely say that, but it's not his MO. Just because it's a dead body near his house doesn't mean he did it. I think it's unlikely. He liked to take them back, have sex with the bodies. Why would he kill someone there? It doesn't seem like his thing. Question number 7. What tools did the police use to fish her out of the water? They were grappling irons. Question 8, which is a hard one. What was the name of the police officers? It was PCs Hithersay and Glenn. There you go. I'll give you 2 points if you got both of those. Question number 9. What was the name of the pub where Lena met Edgar? It was the Green Man pub in Leytonstone, which is still there. No, I think it's recently shut down. Was there until recently, I believe. And question number 10, another hard one. I'll give it to you. It'll be worth 2 points. What was the address of the scrapyard in Wanstead? It was 72 Eastern Avenue, which is no longer there. It's been long since been demolished. So there we go. That's that. Core, what a horrible story. But that was one of those ones where I saw it and thought, that's so sad and tragic, I was hooked within minutes. Well, within the first page. I hadn't even read the first page fully and I was hooked. So there we go. Hope you enjoyed that, folks. Next week, a more modern story. I think that's all I'm going to say about it. Anyway, there's a fly. Fuck off. Fuck off, fly. Bastard. Have yourself a good week. Not you. You're not a bastard and you're not a fly. Maybe if you are a fly listening to this, then I'm sorry for calling you a bastard. Have yourself a good week. Stay safe, everyone. Be good. Stay away from the canals, especially if you're in Slough. Have a good one. Be good. Bye.